Do you see b4? Any b4 last move? Okay. To be honest, I hate live streaming. I really do, for serious stuff. But I want to get through these games. I want to do it for me. I want to get through these 5 games. So I'm going to carry on. Okay. So, should we have a recap on this game 4? Okay, we're going to have a recap from the beginning. Caruana against Noidish was a Catalan. It started like this. Okay, so Catalan, we have this position. White's getting a slight advantage. He provokes some dark square weaknesses. So knight g5, he's provoked some dark square weaknesses. Maybe technically, you know, black should have considered, no, that was okay, I think g6. But here, maybe bishop e7 was interesting to try and avoid another weakness. But f6 is interesting as well. Okay, no, bishop e7, pardon me, was played here. Bishop c6. Alright, here, pardon me, it was here. f6, is that avoidable? The thing is, white was threatening queen h6, so he's forcing some concessions. So f6, bishop d4, we have rook ac1. So strategic plan for white, get rid of the bishop pair, weaken black on the dark squares. Rook fd8. Bishop h3, bishop d7. We have taking here, and now white establishes that use of the c5 square. He actually gets good pass pawn potential from what he's doing. He doesn't just exchange off the dark square weaknesses. What happens now is b4, he establishes a passed pawn. Black plays rook takes, and we have b takes. Queen c7. e4, hitting the knight, the queen centralizes, king g7, e5, f5, and now we have bishop g2. So white's got this nice queen d6 available. He's accumulating positional advantages. By the way, I realised, I think I'll make a note for next time. I didn't need to stop and create a new stream. That was a bit radical. I could have just redone the screen. So I should know that for next time. Whoops. Okay. You find out these things. So, okay, h6, queen d6. White's getting some passed pawns. After this, he's forking queen and knight. So he's actually getting a big advantage. Could black have avoided this? It's difficult here. This is dangerous. Queen h4, looking at f6. If knight d5, knight g5, and actually bishop takes d5 is nasty in this position. So here bishop takes. Here. This is not very nice for black. So, okay, we have this h6 stopping this stuff, but now queen d6. Black takes on d6, e takes d6, knight c6, and it looks as though the pawns are well blockaded at the moment, but they're quite far advanced. White plays now knight e1. So he's threatening actually with this, simply to take this guy off, and then put the knight either like to get onto e5, or even this way, because the bishop can never take of d7. So that's the threat at the moment. we have a5. Now white can just take on c6 for this to play knight d3, and that's really strong as well. That's a really strong continuation. So white's basically got a strategically won position here. There's different ways of skinning the cat now. He plays knight d3, so he's simply pressing to take on c6, and these pawns are going to be liberated. Yes, it's pretty bad for black, this position. You might think, well, can the king stop that? It's only temporary. If the king f6, we just play, I think we just play f4. We're still going to do this and play knight e5. It's pretty bad. So we see black playing b4 here. And yes, taking on c6 does appear to be a winning move. We have h4 instead. Knight d4. Is this setting a little trap or something? King h2 was played in this position. If knight e5, a4, maybe black's pawns are getting a bit dangerous. Black's going to sack the bishop and try and get his pawns going. Maybe it's a little final trap. If taking b3, black might actually be back in the game. It gets tricky because of these passed pawns over here. This would be very problem-like. Indeed, this position. Actually, black might be. It's probably equal because of white's passed pawn there. No, he doesn't want any of that stuff. He plays actually king h2 here. And black plays bishop b5. If he plays a4 in this position, well, the knight hasn't committed yet. He can just take on b4. So okay, so knight plays bishop b5. And now we have knight e5 finally. So these pawns are really ready to roll with c6. King f6. And here white has got two very powerful moves. He can either support the knight, but the passed pawns are winning in this position. In any case, doesn't even have to support the knight. Can you see? Well, he just plays c6 in this position. This is winning now. It's winning a piece, or the pawns are queening. If king takes e5, d7 queening. Yeah, if knight takes, we just take. We're queening. Bishop takes. Whoops. Yeah, if bishop takes, we just win a piece. Knight takes c6. And that's not very nice. Black's not really doing much here. Yeah, so this is just winning after c6. The pawns are just crashing through. Okay, so that was game in round 4. So c6, knight takes c6. Sorry, bishop takes c6, knight takes c6. This was the final position. I don't know what's going on about the resolution. Right, was this game okay? I'm just going to ask, did anyone get anything out of this Catalan game? Yeah, that's my question. We could carry on to another game. If you, I could do a very quick review, or we can go on to the next game. Quick review or next game. Oh dear, 240. I don't know why this is happening with resolution, whatever. Okay, I think I could probably save bandwidth by asking my Play Chess people to look at it on YouTube. Alright, because I've done my hour. Okay. I can't paste that. I think it will give me more bandwidth. I'm just going to quickly upload this. No, I can't continue on YouTube. I'm using the resource here. I think the heat's got to my brain actually. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? Oh my god. So wait, we're using the pod here, aren't we? So are you saying the resolution was okay? Should we try and carry on for another game? Oh great. Oh man, okay, just excuse, this is like brain malfunction, okay, and computer malfunction, but I think I shouldn't have been using Stockfish. I think Fritz is safer to use as the engine of choice. Okay, we're going to go on to another game. It is pretty hot. It is pretty hot. Right, we've got Kramnik against Caruana, very exciting. Kramnik against Caruana. I'm going to carry on this. Kramnik, Caruana. So this was like round 5. Muppets. Let's get the PGN. Right, I have played through these games a few times. Let's play with the black perspective. So knight f3 from Vladimir Kramnik. Is your board not changing? Okay, board not changing, right? Let's see if I've got a refresh trick on this guy. I'm going to refresh your board. I should have done that before as a standard solution. So you've got a new board with knight f3 coming up. Or not. Yes, no, maybe. Okay, how's the resolution? Okay, so d5 from Caruana. G3. So this is G6, both sides fianchettoing. D4. And Caruana just plays knight f6 here. So yeah, he's got a pawn on d5. It looks so he's a fond of fianchettoed bishops in this tournament, it seems. Both sides castle. c4, c6, knight bd2. On live book, let's just get live book view on this position. It doesn't look as though black's got some interesting prospects to do much. Bishop f5 has been played a lot before. Caruana actually plays, also knight e4 has been played 100 times. He actually plays a5, this has been played about 100 times as well. b3, this has all been played before. Usually black plays bishop f5 here, he played a4. Interestingly, well, kind of relatively, bishop b2 is usually played here in this position. Kramnik veered off a little bit with bishop a3. It looks as though, isn't that bishop a tactical liability, or is it a pain for black? We have a takes b3, a takes b3. Get my frets on. Backgrounds, bishop f5. Knight h4, driving the bishop from that diagonal. It just drops back to e6. Rook e1. And now it seems quite an aggressive move. Well, white hasn't really protected his d pawn. The bishop's over here. It seems a bit odd that the d pawn hasn't got any support. We see this move knight e4, which seems fairly logical, just to hit d4. So threatening bishop takes d4. White maybe could have considered, this is a very simple move, but Vladimir Kramnik's seen like millions of variations if you check his post-mortems. A very simple move might have been just e3 here, surely. Or is it running into anything horrible? I'm not sure it is running into anything particularly disastrous, actually. Knight c3, there's queen c2, no big deal. So this e3 seems to have been a playable move, but we see a more complex continuation in this position. We see bishop takes e4, d takes e4, knight takes e4, offering the d4 pawn. That's taken. And now we see queen c2. So what is white's big idea in this position? Well, white seems to have annoying pressure here. He's inviting, I don't think this is any good, to take two rooks for a queen. He's threatening perhaps just to do this and then take on e7. Now if black did take on a1, let's examine this for a moment. I think this is actually better for white. Bishop takes e7, and this should be better for white, this position here. It's unpleasant. You see that the black king is slightly compromised, even though it's two rooks for a queen. In this particular position, would everyone agree that white is actually significantly better? Do you agree? You've got to look at the positions for two rooks for the queen on their own merits. So would you say white's better here? This is a variation. White's better here? It looks pretty dangerous. Yeah? Yeah, because the rooks are not coordinating that greatly. Say bishop h3, queen d1. We're hitting, what are we threatening? Well, we're actually threatening this now. Yeah, it's not great. So yeah, in this position though, there is a move which is very good for black, and I think this kind of backfired white's plan. That's why I'm saying the simple move e3 might have been best. Black now plays a very, very interesting forcing move in bishop f5, which seemingly the knight was designed against. So he's accepting some structural damage. but it's actually a way of wrenching out winning the exchange. White seems virtually forced to take on f5. If bishop c5, queen e5. Well, that's the problem with e4. And in fact here black can even do better with rook takes a1. So yeah, it was taken knight takes f5, g takes. The knight hasn't got too many squares to go to. g5, c5. If it goes there, it's like taken. If it goes to d2, then this might be unpleasant. Queen c3. If it goes to c5, I think we just take out a3. We just take on a3 and we're taking on c5. So the knight seems best. Okay, maybe the best would have been, it seems, knight d2 technically seems to have been the best. This position, if I can grovel here, this seems to have been, but still black's doing nicely. But no, Vladimir plays actually knight g5. We have black winning the exchange basically with queen g4 in broad daylight at move 17, and it seems very strange that this happens because we've got this threat and we've got this threat. At one simple level, it seems as though black has forcibly won the exchange. Now, is this really the case? I mean, is this really the case? Well, white did play f4 here. What does white do not to avoid losing the exchange? If I ask you that, how does white avoid losing the exchange? Because I don't think there's any way. Is that correct? We've got a loose knight on g5 and the rook is hit. If bishop takes e7, I don't think that helps at all. Black just takes on a1. Yeah, so it seems as though, yeah, quite early on Caruana is winning the exchange in this particular game, technically, which some of you might think is alarming. Yeah, but often there's positional compensation, so often it's not a big deal. Here black has got fractured pawns, etc. Okay, so yeah, Vladimir goes with the exchange loss with f4. So bishop takes a1, rook takes a1. Black has to trade carefully. He kicks the knight and now develops with knight d7. So this bishop's pinned anyway, right? We have rook d1, exchanging off. Basically black doesn't have to play this. He can take this bishop. If he plays this, I think this is better for white anyway. Bishop takes e7. You don't want that. So he takes off this bishop, which could have been really dangerous on the dark squares. Rook takes d7. Is white getting a pawn here? Well, we have queen h3, and this is actually quite dangerous for rook a1, funny enough. If white tries to win one of these pawns, let's give an example, then check. This position is dangerous. Rook d8, it seems dangerous. This king chase could end up badly for white. So yeah, he doesn't really want to take a pawn here. He actually played queen c3, stopping this and also putting the queen on what seems to be a dangerous diagonal. Black now supported this pawn. Yeah, he didn't want to lose that one. He played e6. White takes this pawn. So one pawn for the exchange. Is that a big deal? 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5. One pawn for the exchange. Yeah, it's about equal actually, technically. Rook f8. The rooks though want to do something with the queen. King f2. The king seems to be technically safe at this point. White does seem to have a good dark square grip. White does seem to have good active rook here. The knight seems comfortable. The queen seems well parked. Rook a1. The king actually steps to the center here in advance of any checks. Rook f1. Queen f6, and this looks actually quite menacing now. Rook f8, Rook d7. Might be a slight inaccuracy, Rook d7, but this requires precision actually. If this is an inaccuracy, it requires precision. This position. King d4 is the engine move. This doesn't look too human to me to play like this, or King c5. It doesn't look particularly like a human continuation. Maybe trying to grab a perpetual check. I think that's the point where perpetual check can be grabbed. But anyway, no, in the game we have this move Rook d7, Rook b1, and now this is dangerous. Rook takes b3 is dangerous. Rook goes back to support that. c5, as though, hang on, is he bringing up some sort of mating net or something around the white king? Actually, everything is still technically okay in balance here. Rook b5, Rook f1. I think a blunder is about to occur though. Knight d2 might be a significant mistake for white's king safety. Possibly it seems Rook takes c5 was playable here, but Knight d2 was played, Rook c1, and the threat now seems to be Queen g2 getting onto e2, maybe with Rook e1 later. This is a bit dangerous. Queen b2, Rook h1, sorry, Rook d1, Queen c2, Rook h1, Knight goes to f3, protecting h2, Queen g2. Okay, what is being threatened now? Well, the Queen is far away from any perpetual check scenario, and black now might want to join rooks like this. Queen c3, the Queen's going back over that, Rook f1. And actually this threatens now a horrible check here with Rook d8. Yeah, this is dangerous. Queen f6. And somehow, yeah, white has gone wrong with his king safety here, it appears. In this position, black seems to be absolutely winning at +14. So yeah, it seems Rook f2 and black seems absolutely winning in this position. Yeah, he had a tight path to tread. Yeah, he seems to be in very, very big trouble. He played actually King d3, and after takes, the king is getting hacked. It's over actually. Knight g5, Rook d2 check, and Kramnik resigned. Let's just take this last section for a moment. The exchange down is sometimes difficult to play. Okay, so Vladimir Kramnik had to resign this position. He's getting mated in 2, for example, like this, and then mate. Let's just rewind what happened. Maybe it was like time pressure and stuff. So it seems from an engine point of view, there's enough compensation to try and draw this with best play. If this knight stayed here, Rook takes c5, and say something like this, you might think this is mega dangerous for Queen f2. I think the point is Queen takes h6 is almost like guaranteeing a perpetual check. So it doesn't really matter. Okay, this check here, you might think Rook d1, Rook d8. There's Rook d5 as a resource. This is guaranteeing, I think, perpetual check time. I do agree. Do you agree on this? White is securing a draw. This is something. This is just a technical way of getting a draw. Yeah. So if e takes, we just get a perpetual check draw. No, in fact, we're better after e takes. You know, check. Apparently, this is actually quite good for white. This would be great fun for white. This position. So yeah, Rook d5. What does white do? If he takes like this, this might actually be better. Here. Knight e5. We've got lots of threats. I think black is the one that has to go for the perpetual check now. Black goes to the perpetual check. Yeah, so it just seems as though it seems here taking on c5 might have, funny enough, been a very good shot for white, because he wants to take out this pawn when this queen goes here, and it sort of shields this d file. So in the game continuation, yes, knight d2, this continuation here somehow goes completely wrong because there's no shielding on the d file and the queen is away from perpetual check time. If here, then we just lose the rook or something. We just lose the rook to queen f2. So yeah, precision moves were needed when the queen was quite optimally placed on f6, the knight quite optimally placed on f3, it seems. This position here, rook takes c5 anyway. Yeah, it seems theoretically white could have been securing a draw, in theory, if it was a correspondence game. Okay, maybe that was like time pressure and stuff. So knight d2 started white's major demise here. Yeah. Anyone still awake? So a very complex game again. Yeah. I don't know. Very difficult to play the position. Very difficult. Right, let's go on to another game. Caruana against who? Yifan. Yifan who? So, are you saying who? I'm saying Yifan who. You're saying who? I'm saying Yifan who. Okay, and it carries on. No, Fabiano Caruana is playing white against Hu Yifan. So c4 is played, English opening. e6. Just wait for your board to refresh. I'm hoping you get this. Knight c3, d5. Yeah, I'm learning as well. I shouldn't have restarted a different stream. I just realised I've made quite a few technical blunders this evening. But anyway, so yeah, d4 is good in retrospect. You pick up these things. So bishop b4. Okay, so this position looks like Rogozin territory. White is often playing knight f3. Okay, but in fact this forcing move a3 is played. So Caruana wants the bishop pair. And you know, this is taken. Okay. Knight f6. White is often playing f3 here, it seems, and the evaluation generally is given as equal. There's about 1500 games of f3. So for example, like this, we have some games like this. This is a popular continuation, apparently. So yeah, f3 is quite popular here by far, but in fact the lesser popular is about 200 games, 213 with e3 instead. And usually black castles, but now here black played c6. We're going off the rails a bit. And usually white plays f3 here. This is quite popular, but white played a4. And this is a little bit strange. Although in some respects, it reminds me anyway of the winner variation against the French defense. No, I don't know any. I'm just looking at live book. I'm referring at live. That's why I think I'm learning a bit of opening theory with each game. I'm checking live book here, but this plan reminds me in the French defence winner. There's a Fischer plan. You use your dark square bishop. You play a4 and you play, you know, this diagonal. So he's playing a4. It's actually quite a rare bird move. Usually, yeah, even in this position, f3 is popular, like this, for example. Okay, that's quite popular. There's a few games there. But yeah, we see this move a4. So what is Caruana doing? We're out of book now, it seems, mostly. Castles. Yeah, we're in a kind of outside of trodden territory. We're going there. b6, c takes d5, e takes d5. And at first glance, and I really do know this personally, sometimes in these variations where black's doubling the pawns, this bishop can become a prisoner in your own pawn chain. I was actually 2 pawns down against GM Peter Wells in the Nimza Indian with such a terrible bishop on c1. So I found this game extra fascinating. I managed to draw that with a miracle last December, 2 pawns down during the game against the Nimza Indian specialist with a terrible bishop on c1. This is not the sort of thing you want. Has this bishop really got prospects in this position? Believe it or not, okay, if I asked you, I'll ask you a question about this bishop on c1. Do you think the bishop will ever move during the course of this game? I'm going to ask you, does the bishop ever move in this game from this point on? The c1 bishop. Watch out for it anyway. So obviously I'm giving you a clue by asking you. Would I ask you if it did move? Probably not. So okay, silly question, but let's carry on. Okay, so bishop d3, and black wants to get rid of the light square bishops and lock down on the light squares, right? So this next move seems like a typical French defense type maneuver. You exchange off the light square bishops while the knight's still on b8. White castles. We have move c5. Knight e5. Now it might seem logical just to take here. That does seem like the engine choice. Why not just take off the light square bishops and then play from there? Maybe that seems logical, but we see this move rook e8. Now white plays a5. And we have now here bishop takes d3. And now queen takes d3 seems reasonably sensible. But actually knight takes d3 is played. And it seems as though technically white's threatening to win a pawn, but it wouldn't seem that significant, surely, that pawn there. Would it? Is it really worth even a positional gambit for black to sack that pawn rather than play knight bd7? Is there any big problem playing knight bd7? Is this too simple? Knight bd7. What does white do here? I'm not sure white has a gigantic advantage in this position. The engine has its slightly minuscule advantage, by the way. 0.09, minuscule. Just knight bd7 is a simple move, yeah? But, you know, the more you can think about sophisticated ideas. And black thinks up this fantastically sophisticated idea to sack the c pawn. Yifan plays knight c6. So the question is, do we really want to take this c pawn? Do we want to win the c pawn? Do we really want to win that c pawn? I mean, would we be suffering something really, really bad if we won the c pawn? And again, I've played through this game 3 times. I try and get some idea of what happened actually with that engine analysis. I try and get some idea. Why would we want to win the c pawn? That was my big question. Why would we want to win that c pawn? Is it strategically important? You know what the c pawn does, which makes it important here? It controls d4, Now, why is d4 important? And this is from retrospect on the game. d4 would be nice if we had a piece on d4 like the queen. It could g7. Why is g7 important? Because if we can get a knight later to h5, then that'd be really cool. So somehow there could be an enthusiasm with winning this c-pawn. We can actually test Yifan Hu here. If we won that c-pawn, why didn't she play knight bd7? Isn't this a crazy game? Well, anyway, white wants to test this. He plays a takes b6. He takes on a8 and he commits to winning that c-pawn. Is this really a fantastic gambit? Is this some intuitive genius on Yifan Hu's part? Knight takes c5 is played and saying, okay, what have you got here? I'm winning this c-pawn. I know my bishop hasn't moved and it's stuck between these two silly pawns, but I've won the c-pawn and potentially I'm going to put my queen on d4 if you're not careful. And in fact, there's already frontal pressure on d5, so even if queen d4 is not possible, something like knight d3 to f4 might hit d5, right? It seems immediately Yifan Hu gives up d4 with her next move. She wants to get into the light squares. She plays knight e5 here. She plays knight e5, yes, knight e5. And actually, okay, what is going on here? Let's see. White actually plays knight d3. If he plays queen d4, is there a penalty? Well, maybe knight c6 is annoying. Okay, so knight d3 is played with the idea that maybe knight f4 is interesting. You might think, well, knight takes d3. Isn't this knight better than this bishop? Well, actually, knight c4 was played, which seems to put this bishop as a prisoner. And I know about the c1 bishop as a prisoner. Isn't the bishop a prisoner? Is this worth a pawn? Is this the whole point? It was a positional gambit to get this Nimzovician knight on c4, crushing this poor bishop. The life and soul of this bishop is at stake. Black's also got e4 firmly marked with all of these pieces. So isn't this a beautiful position for black? Would you say black is doing fantastically? Has black got enough compensation here for the pawn? What is your opinion on this? Is it all about the c1 bishop? It seems to be. That was the perspective, it seems, on this gambit, to torture the c1 bishop in particular. Has black got enough compensation here? I mean, I tried desperately to get my c1 bishop alive against Grandmaster Peter Wells, and I did eventually get some compensation I shouldn't have, because he's a time trouble person. He's often getting into time trouble, but I was very lucky. Yeah, sometimes you want to liberate that bishop later. You think there's enough compensation? Yeah? Your favourite black. Let's see the game. Knight f4. The thing is, white has got this d4 square. Remember, I've just mentioned it before. White can play for queen d4. And you might think, well, that's not a big deal. Surely. Yeah? Just because there's a missing tooth here, you get a queen on d4. Don't you need a lot more pressure on g7 than is possibly imaginable in this position? Well, what if white started flinging everything around to get to g7 later? Let's have a look at the game. h6, queen d4. Okay, the queen is evicted. Temporarily, we're going to kick this rook, get the queen back. By the way, sorry, I'm sounding like there's this guy on YouTube called the Backyard Professor, and actually I think he sounds really enthusiastic, if a bit crazy. So I was thinking about him and how to do the presentation tonight, and it's a bit Backyard Professorish, I know, but you know, these games, you know, they have got an enthusiasm behind them that I think white is enthusiastic about controlling that d4 square and putting pressure on g7. And you'll see this. Rook e5, f3. The queen is going to go back to d4. The bishop remains a prisoner of that gambit. Queen a2, queen d4. Okay, now, what is white threatening? Not much at the moment. Queen a4. Black is celebrating her dark square grip. h4. h4. What is white up to? Queen b5. And yes, yes, g4. G4 with this bishop dead. The thing is, it's dead, but it cannot be munched. The bishop cannot be munched. It's holding white's position together. The queen is sitting prettily on d4, putting pressure on g7, and things are going to come and help that queen soon at some point. It doesn't seem with g5, no, but maybe the rook can swing, maybe the king can swing. We're going to take a swing at g7 soon. Knight d7, knight d3, kicking the rook away to e6, king g2, knight db6, yes, look, I've got this fantastic light square grip. Knight a4 might even be a threat. Knight f4, and look, all of a sudden, hold on a sec, knight h5, we've got all of a sudden cooperation on g7. We're threatening f4. What is happening to black? Has she misplayed this? We're threatening f4, aren't we? We're also threatening knight takes g7 and f4. Yes, he's turned into Nakamura. Caruana has turned into Nakamura. His excuse is the queen was on d4. The bishop is not doing a thing in this game at the moment. Queen b1. And now, finally, in this position, what is going on here after queen b1? Why can't white play knight takes g7 or f4? Well, actually, f4 might be almost playable, but no, we have this liberation of the bishop with e4 here, prepared carefully. The bishop is finally seeing some light of day. D takes, and now white self blocks because, you know, g7. Let's mate on g7, forcing black to sacrifice the exchange. Rook takes h5, g takes h5. Who is better now? Is white better now? What do you think of black's gambit now of the c5 pawn? Not so funny, huh? Not so clever. Black throws in this check, king h1, but now we've got potential for rook g1. Queen e2, we have rook g1, threatening mate, yes. Check, rook g2. You might think, well, hang on, this is a loose bishop. Is there time really? If only we can defend the king. g6. This is just taken, allowing. It seems, you know, queen f1. Is this perpetual? Guess what white plays here? White play here. What does white play in this position? He wants to avoid a perpetual. What would you play as white in this position? Yes, king h2. That poor bishop, it hadn't moved the entire duration of the game. Hadn't moved, is sacrificing itself here. Queen takes c1. It was holding the f4 pawn, right? White's got a forced win here actually. It's a forced checkmate with g takes f7. But also queen f6 is winning as well, which is slightly less accurate. It's a mate in 10 compared to a mate in 7. The mate in 7, for those interested, runs like this. G takes, king takes, check. See here, check. Here, check. Here, check. Here, check. Here, queen f8. And the knights are spectators, by the way. But this is a forced mate as well. Just queen f6. maybe easier to calculate. Queen f6. What does black do about this? Black has to give up the queen. Much easier to calculate. Black has to give up the queen. The knights are not doing anything. If knight d6, we can just take this, check, rook g8. Much easier to calculate. It's just nonsense moves which delay it actually. So queen f6 is absolutely murderous, protecting f4. So that poor bishop gave itself up, gave all rights up for moving the bishop, and just was sacrificed on its square on c1 for white to have that crushing attack. So yes, all those that said the gambit was sound, obviously you're proven wrong by the evidence of this game. But so, you know, this is what I mean. In long games you can think about these amazing concepts, but okay, here it was actually disproven. The concept of the pawn sacrifice here was disproven. But I thought in a fascinating way, white really made use of that centralized queen with these pawn movements. So I think that was quite an eye-opener for how to refute a positional gambit, because yeah, black did seem to have a good stranglehold on the light squares. I think everyone would agree there's a stranglehold on the light squares, but it seems as though white, if playing like a caveman, it starts to put pressure on black. Why did that knight move? I think white is slowly building up here in any case. So say, you know, black didn't do anything. How do we build up? Or maybe we're just doing something like g5. That's starting to rupture things. Rook f2. We're starting to cause some problems after rook g2. So yeah, it was starting to, the pressure was starting to be felt on the king side before that knight moved. This exchange sack not up to it. Winning the bishop was not great. King safety was finally broken. Okay, so that's an interesting game, I thought. Okay, anybody get anything out of that game? It's very complex games. So there's one more game I wanted to check out. So this was Nispenu against Caruana. Let's flip the board. So e4 from Nispenu, who's 2-6-5-4 at the start of the game. e5. He'd beaten Wesley So. It's a Grand Prix attack video recently on my channel. You haven't seen that before. So he's quite a dangerous hack attacker player. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. Rare bird, bishop c4 nowadays. Let's play this. Go piano, back to primary school chess. It's actually the Evans Gambit with b4 is played. So Nispenu is quite creative in his openings. Okay, so bishop takes b4. c3 is the most common thing to construct a center quickly. d4. Now black often takes on d4 here, but d6 is another popular choice. Queen b3 is the most common move, putting immediate pressure on f7 without any knight a5 being possible because the bishop's on a5. So black protects rather artificially looking, blocking in his own bishop, protecting f7. It does the job. D takes, and black doesn't want to take on e5 usually. Black usually just wants to play bishop b6 here, which vacates a5 for this knight a5 to fork these two guys. Now white usually plays knight here, d2, knight d2. Another move is bishop b5, pinning down that knight. Here we see a very rare bird move indeed. So I say 45 games for that. Bishop b5, there's 8. E takes d6 is handing black a slight advantage apparently. I'll just quickly show you that. With knight a5. Yeah, if we take out that bishop, that's good news for black, and then it's good news for black. So yeah, this is the rare bird move which makes the game unique, theoretically, from an opening theory point of view. a4, we're out of book, right? We're completely out of live book after a4. Now you might wonder, why on earth would you play a4 here? Because surely black has got knight a5 and you lose your very important light square bishop, the attacking bishop. Why on earth would you do this? So is this some sort of weird prepared line? So black does play knight a5, queen a2, taking off the light square bishop. And yes, black, okay, can't take on e5, fine, that would be horrible. Knight e7, bishop a3, so that's the idea, some pressure on this diagonal. Okay, fair enough. So both sides now castle, black castles, white castles. And yes, it's very uncomfortable. It seems, you know, this bishop pressure, but rook e8 is played calmly. Black has the bishop pair. Black doesn't have to worry about any a5 anytime soon. Who do you think stands better here, white or black, out of this gambit? To white's credit, you know, it's very romantic era. Yeah, very romantic era. But do you think white stands better technically here? We take these games from Caruana's perspective, by the way. I flipped the board because Caruana's playing black. So who would you say stands better? Black? White? Okay. Well, the engine seems to think black's okay here, if that counts. So E takes d6, C takes d6. We're equal on pawns, right? We seem to have a measly pawn here, though, which can be subject to frontal attack, it seems. Rook d1 seems to tie it down. We have queen c6. Now, if white wants to take on d6, well, he can't at the moment, because e4 is a problem, right? Knight takes, we're on e4. And black will be fine off that. So the queen shifts. No, actually, knight bd2, not shifts. But we have bishop e6. This light square bishop is something white doesn't have. Queen takes c6, knight takes c6. And it's a gambit. It's a gambit of the d6 pawn. Why would this gambit work so well here? Or does it work? Is it unsound? Bishop takes d6. Rook a d8. Imagine that. Imagine that. He's just won a game the round before from refuting a seemingly positional gambit. But this, it seems he's doing a positional kind of pawn gambit. He's got the bishop pair. Does this seem more convincing in terms of compensation than the previous game? Is there immediate, concrete compensation here? Let's see. I mean, the bishop went to a strange place. It went, of all places, to b4. If it went to a3, then actually there is immediate concrete compensation. Rook d3. What do we do about this pawn? c4. This is horrible, isn't it? Whoa. There's concrete compensation here, surely. Bishop a5 next. This is pretty nasty, doubling rooks. So it seems if the bishop goes to a3, yeah, rook d3. What do we do about this? Rook c1. We're just going to double up rooks again. It's pretty concrete stuff. With bishop b3 following up in this position, these rooks are a bit of a pain. There's enough compensation there. But I don't want to bias you, but do you think white is okay here? A pawn up. Or not? Is it more convincing compensation than the previous game? And why wouldn't the bishop go to g3? Is there some other similar reasons? Let's have a look at the bishop going to f4 or g3. Maybe again rook d3. Yeah, it's a pain. It's slightly different here. Not this. Maybe this. Okay, or bishop g3. It's no big deal where the bishop goes. We're just going to play rook d3 in most of these scenarios. We're going to double up rooks on the d file. Anyway, so the bishop actually went to b4, so holding c3. So saying, look, rook d3 isn't as effective now. You're not hitting this pawn, but rook d3 is played anyway. Saying, okay, I'm just going to double here. What are you going to do about that? You can't move your knight to b3. I've got that covered. Can you move it to f1? Can the knight go to f1? In fact, in the game, a5 was played. If knight f1, it loses a pawn. Actually, take. And we've got bishop e3. Does it lose a pawn? Well, this e pawn. Bishop c2. Is rook takes e4? No, that faults. So actually, in this position, bishop c2. And eventually black should be getting his pawn back one day with good compensation, with equal position. So anyway, white played a5 here. Bishop c7. Black is just positionally wanting to double the rooks basically for his pawn at the moment. We do have knight f1. And now, funny enough, black is getting the pawn back with interest after knight f1, but it was a difficult position. You can't let black just double rooks here. So okay, knight f1, rook takes, and yes, black is taking his pawn back, and he's still got the bishop pair, and black has the superior pawn structure. These pawns seem vulnerable. Black has the bishop pair. Black stands well here, surely. Knight d4, knight c4. We have knight takes e6, as though there's an infiltration point on d7. It looks very tempting to do this. Infiltrate, why not? Rook c6. Okay, so here we go. Black's finally equaled his pawns. He has nice pieces. It's about equal here. Knight g3, technically. Knight f5 would be a tasty move to get in. g6 preventing that. Knight e2. And it seems as though knight d4 is interesting, just to harass the black pieces. Fascinating move is played here, which the engine doesn't pick up on, but which works spectacularly well. I'm wondering why. Okay, we're going to find out why. Black played a5. White played knight d4, which seems extremely clever. So a8, we can take the rook and then take the bishop. What is it with these engines recently? This is just rubbish, man. Look, this looks tempting, right? Doesn't it? Does this position, to you, look good for white for knight d4? Is knight d4 good here? This is what was played. Move 28, knight d4. Is black busted? Isn't he just losing material here? The rook was protecting the bishop. At the cost of losing this bishop, we're going to take out that rook and that bishop. Is knight d4 good here? Is it? Yes? We all say yes. Do you all say yes? Is everyone totally convinced that knight d4 is good here? Please. Are you convinced? Knight d4, isn't that winning material? Something really strange happened in this game here. This is a remarkable combination. Black took on b4 here, giving up his rook. And it looks as though, isn't white just massively winning material? What does black play in this position? Black to play here. What would you play? If I give you 20 seconds. Incredible. There's one thing, no, there's a few things we can say about Caruana's 5 games. One of them is he's definitely good with passed pawns. I mean, I think passed pawns could be a separate skill area of chess. How do you manage passed pawns? How do you create passed pawns? How do you create passed pawn potential? How do you stop your opponent from stopping your passed pawns? This is brilliant, because actually b3 was played. And it seems as though, well, this is rubbish, isn't it? Because the rook can surely get behind this pawn, right? So we have rook takes c7. And now, black to play here. The final move of the game. What does black play in this position? Some suggestions for knight b6. You're saying knight b6 or b6? Actually, b6 is also tempting, isn't it? Yeah, there's a few things to check out here in this position. A few votes for b6, right? Some of you mentioned knight d6. Let's have a look at b6. No, it's not b6, but let's have a look at why. b6 as though we're going to play b7, b2, right? Knight e7 check. Here. We can take on c4 and get behind the pawn. We're getting behind that pawn. End of game. No, it seems as though knight d6 does a better job. And for some, just in this particular position, it seems white can't do a thing about that pawn. He can't do a thing about b2. White cannot do a thing about b2. This is the punchline of the game. Unbelievable. Why can't white do a thing about b2? There's no time, is there? The knight can't help against this pawn. The knight's helpless. Knight d4, b2. Rook here. The knight's delaying by one go. b2. There's no check. The knight's ruled out the check. The knight's ruled out rook takes b7. The knight's in the way of any manoeuvre to get behind the pawn, if that existed. The knight's on b5 anyway, and on c4. And this is end of game. This is end of game. After knight d6. e5. You want to try e5? It's just too late. b2. Anything b2. Oh my god, what a trap. Let's just rewind this. This is diabolical. How are passed pawns so dangerous? You got to admit that you didn't see that one coming, did you? At the end of this game, black had just equalised, playing g6, technically equal from the engine point of view, it seemed. Knight e2, we had a5. Actually, this was quite a forcing move. Where's the bishop going here? Can't go there, we just snap it off, right? So where would the bishop go? e7? But then we've got this passed pawn to deal with. a4, we're threatening a3 here. So it seems, you know, white was trying to be clever here and resourceful because he didn't want to move his bishop. So he plays knight d4 and he runs into this very nasty trap. You know, a takes, knight takes, b3, rook takes c7, knight d6, and the pawn's guaranteed queening. We can throw in a check if you want, it doesn't do anything. I think we can go here. And then what? Yeah, so Caruana's pretty dangerous, huh? So that was the end of that one. So basically Caruana had won 5 games in a row and took the entire tournament. So from his half out of 2 start, he won his next 5 games in a row and won Dortmund. Brilliant performance. So secures him as, you know, like the top 5 in the world for sure. Okay, so thanks very much. Yeah, and I know more about technical issues for future streaming, I think. I'm going to turn off this engine and see you next week. Okay, thanks. See you next week. See you guys. I'm just gonna go now. Comments or questions on YouTube?